I'm not sure if you have a microphone at all. Ah, good. So I was just starting, I don't know how long you've been there. I didn't notice you joined. I started by showing on the Scratch website a simple Simon game. This is what we're trying to create. So I don't know if you saw that. So let me just start with that again a moment. So we lit up a red part, so then we click the red part to repeat it. So now the pattern has grown. You'll see up here, this number 2 tells us how many things are in the pattern. So we repeat the pattern. Now it's grown to 3, so we're repeating the pattern. And if I get it wrong, I get game lose. So that's what kind of game that we're trying to make using the list feature of Scratch. So I got started by simply creating a rectangle, and I've started by initializing the game. We're going to keep a list of what the user has picked, and so the first thing and what the computer has picked randomly to add to that list. So I'm clearing the list by repeatedly deleting elements of the list until it's all gone. So repeating the length of it a number of times, deleting the first element, that'll get rid of everything in that list. Same thing here, repeat length of the user list, delete everything. And since the user list right now is empty, this code won't run at all the first time we run it. But since Scratch doesn't reset, we need to always reset. So then I've also created 2 variables to keep track of what is the length of the user list, so you'll know for both how many you've entered and how many the computer is waiting for you to do. So that's what I did so far first here on the stage, because when you're playing a game, you'll often create a lot of the code on the stage, so the background. So that's what we're doing here. We're getting the game set up by clearing everything, resetting everything, and now it's time to tell it, start over again, add something to the computer list, some random 1 through 4 to the computer list. So under control, I'll just do that as a broadcast, and we'll create a new broadcast, and I'm just going to call it next, basically, so it's the next round of the game. And then I'll add a when I receive next. What do I want to do? Well, I want to randomly pick a number from 1 to 4 and add it to my list. So in the variables, I pull out add thing to the computer list, and that'll add to the end of the list, which is fine. When it's empty, it'll start adding things to it. And then I want to pick a random here. So for thing, pick random from 1 to 4, because we're going to have 4 blocks that you're going to pick from. And then we'll broadcast. So then what we want to do is, okay, we've added a next item to our computer list. We now want to show everything in the computer list and then wait for the user to repeat the list. So we can either, I like to just break things up into broadcast and receive, so that way you can reorganize the elements at times. So now I'm going to say broadcast a new message called show computer picks. And actually we can even say, let's do it as a broadcast and wait for that to be over. So broadcast show computer picks and wait. And then after we've done that, we'll broadcast wait for user picks. So that's how when you say next round, you're basically going to add another random number to the list. It'll add it to the end of the list. Broadcast show what the computer has done in that list, and then broadcast wait for the user to finish, to reach the same number of picks. And in those, it'll check for error. And then when you finish with that, you're going to again broadcast next to start over again. Or wait for user picks can broadcast next, so we can do it that way. So now we need to, when I receive the show computer picks, we're going to want to we're going to want to loop through the list again. So we're going to do the same sort of repeat the length of the list under variables. First control, repeat X number of times. And we want to get the length of the list. And one at a time we want to get that item. and then broadcast it. So we'll go find again on the control, the broadcast and wait. And we'll say, what do we want to get? We want to get that item of the list. Now, we want, each time through this repeat, we want the item that we get to change. So we also need something that keeps track of where we are in the loop. You know, this is the first time through, second time through. So I'm going to make another variable called an index. Often in computer science we'll use an index. And I'm not going to show that one all the time. And I will originally set index to 1 because the list starts at 1, and not computer, but index. And then each time through, we'll set broadcast that index of the computer list, and then we will change the index by 1 so that we loop through. So that'll receive. We're going to receive show computer pics. We're going to walk through all the items in the list one by one, broadcasting that item number. So we're going to be adding these numbers. So these sprites are going to have to receive, like sprite 1 is going to receive a 1, sprite 2 is going to receive a 2. And I haven't duplicated and made all the sprites yet because I want to put code on this one before I start duplicating it. So when it receives, and we'll create a new message called 1, what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to highlight in some way. One nice way to do that is to just make the size different. So we can change the size by 10. We can play a sound. I like playing drums. And if you don't know what they sound like, you can just click on that once to play it. That sounds fine. And then we can change the looks back. Change the size back by -10, I'll put it back to the same size it was. So when I receive a 1, I'll get a little bigger. Oops, I said by 10 again. I should say by -10. So it'll get a little bigger and play a sound and then go back to size. And I can shrink it, since I did grow it a little bit and I didn't mean to. Go back and shrink it a little now. And maybe grow it. And we also want to detect when the user clicks on it. So control when 1 is clicked. So when the user clicks on it, we want to add that to the users list. So add, and we're just going to add number 1 to the user list, because the user list is keeping track of what the user has clicked. And then we can every time you add something to the user list, we want to change the this variable, user variable up here. So we can change that as well. Set user to, we want to set it to the length of that list, length of user list. So that'll update to add something on there. And then we also, when we add to the computer pic, did I do that yet? Yeah, when we receive next, we should also update that number. So every time you add something to the computer list, we should also set user computer to the length of that list. So it shows how many things are in that list. So those will keep track of how many things are in the list for us. So now we have some code on our sprite, and we can go ahead and duplicate the sprite. To duplicate a sprite, you right-click on it down here in the, oh shoot, I'm on a Mac, and it doesn't always work on a Mac. There it is. Right, I have to use a command click on the Mac. So I say duplicate, and then I want to call this one, instead of sprite 2, I want to call it 2, and I want to edit it and change the color. And I can move it up here. And I'm going to get rid of these lists at the moment. I don't want to see them at the moment. And I'll do the same thing again. Command click, duplicate. Go just make sure I'm editing that one. Call it sprite 3. edit the costume, change the color. We want a reddish one. Oops, I forgot to actually use the paintbrush.